Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jordan. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. So today, if you clicked on this video, it was because you were interested in this lens right here. This is the Rokinon 85mm f1.4 Series 2 lens. So let's go ahead and dive into this real quick. So starting off with the price, this is listed on Rokinon's website for $399, although I did see it on B&H and Amazon for $299. I believe B&H had it on sale, so that price might fluctuate. Now, as far as the weight of this lens goes, this lens right here is 1.6 pounds with the lens cap and the hood on. It is 1.5 ounces with the lens hood, and it is 1 pound 3.3 ounces of the lens by itself. Now, the construction on this is a fully manual focus and aperture lens with no image stabilization. It does have 9 aperture blades and a UMC or ultra multi coating on the lens itself. The construction of the body feels like it is aluminum, or it could be a very good possibility that it is a really heavy plastic. I'm not really sure because, well, maybe this ring right here is metal. Maybe the aperture ring is plastic. The declicker and the click ring for the aperture seems like it would be metal. The lens itself, it sounds like it could be metal. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't really find any information on Rokinon's website. So just take that as it is. It could be a very good possibility that this is either aluminum or just a super heavy plastic. But it feels really sturdy in the hand. You could actually take this lens off and beat the shit out of somebody with it if you absolutely needed to. It also includes a weather sealing gasket on the back, which is a pretty nice touch, especially for a pretty inexpensive lens when you think about, I mean, even if you bought this from B&H for $299, I mean, it's $300. It doesn't have autofocus or anything. But 85mm with weather sealing, yes please. Now, I will say that the focusing ring on this lens turns pretty smoothly. It does have a bit of resistance to it, but it's not so much that you can't turn it. It's really quite nice. It's a really nice, smooth lens to focus, so just take that into consideration. You don't really need a whole lot of pressure, but you also feel that you just need to give it just enough, if that makes sense. Now, I did mention this little ring right here. So this is a declicking ring. So basically, if you are a video shooter and you're using this, you can either use it for photography or video. Basically, all you got to do is just twist that, and basically it makes the apertures unclick, which I think is a pretty nice feature. I would also like to see other lens companies do stuff like that for their manual focus lens. Like my Laowas, they don't have one of those, even though the Laowas are still kind of like, they're not super clicky, but they do have like little hard stops. This one is pretty audible, so like if you're standing next to it or if you're shooting video and you had to twist it, you would definitely hear that. I mean, in camera audio, you would hear that for sure. And then also, this does take a 72mm lens filter, so 72mm filter on the very end of this. If you were wondering, the lens hood is plastic, comes with it. You will definitely need this, especially if you're shooting in bright, harsh, sunny days. This guy right here. It's pretty nice to actually have lens hoods. I kind of never used to like lens hoods, and then I started getting a couple of them with the lenses, and I see the reason for them. So for the aperture with this lens wide open, it has an f1.4, and stop down it goes to an f22. Now, I'm not really 100% sure, but there are little clicks in between each one of these apertures. So I'm assuming it goes from f1.4 to an f1.8 to f2.2, f2.8. I'm assuming probably either an f3.2 or an f3.5 to 4, to maybe a 4.5 or an f5 to an f5.6, probably an f7.1 to an f8, maybe an f9 to an f11 to an f14 to an f16 to an f20 and then to an f22. I'm not really 100% sure. I didn't see anything on Rokinon's website, but that's what I'm assuming. The bokeh to me on this lens looks great. It is soft and pleasing to me personally. I really can't say much bad about it, as it personally gets me the images that I want. There is some minimal ghosting at wider apertures due to the way that Rokinon uses their old aspherical lens construction. So this lens is kind of actually based on the very first one of these that Rokinon made, just with an updated kind of look and the declickering. So just take that into consideration. Most of the color fringing in the photos is easily removable when processing the images through Lightroom. So just take that into consideration. Now, as far as image quality goes, I do want to mention something about the advertised close focusing distance with this lens. Now, Rokinon on their website claims 3.6 feet, which is not really that close, especially at 85mm. Maybe would have liked to have seen something a little bit closer, but anyways, I digress. Upon testing this lens, I threw this lens onto my Canon EOS RP onto a tripod, and I set it up with a tape measure. Yes, I broke out a tape measure for this because I needed to find out exactly if 3.6 was as advertised, and it was not. So upon my testing, I actually found that the close focusing distance was closer to 3.8 feet exactly, as opposed to the 3.6 feet close focusing distance that Rokinon claims. Now, I did measure that from the sensor plane marked on the camera body to the end of the tape measure, and basically all I did was I measured out 3.6 feet, put it on top, and then slid it basically into place until I got it into focus. And at 3.8 feet was when the end of the tape measure was in focus. So just so you know, it's actually 3.8. Could be a little bit different with this lens, and it could also be because I used it on a full frame mirrorless and not a DSLR, which this was probably designed for it at the beginning. So just take that into consideration. Now, there are no contacts on the back of here, so the camera can't read what lens this is. So, anyways, I turned off all of the camera corrections in my camera off. I also turned them off in Lightroom. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this starting at an f1.4. At f1.4, you get a good center sharpness with a heavy vignette, slight color fringing or chromatic aberration. With the testing card that I used, you also get soft corners and a slight barrel distortion. At f2, the vignette on this lens is a little less noticeable. Stopping down to an f2.8, the corners sharpen up. At an f5.6, the vignette starts to disappear. You get a great sharpness all around the image. And at f16, softness due to diffraction starts to kick in. Now, I did want to test this lens because at f1.4, you do sometimes get a lot of color fringing. So what I did was I overexposed a couple images to see if I could get more color fringing or chromatic aberration to appear, and at 1 and 2 extra stops overexposed, the color fringing was not as noticeable, but at 3 stops overexposed, you definitely notice it. So take that into consideration while shooting outdoors during bright and sunny days. Now, the only reason why I did that was because you're not always going to use this lens at golden hour. Maybe you're shooting somebody and the only time that they have to, let's say, only time that they have to do a photo shoot is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, okay? Now, I just wanted to see how bad the color fringing, the chromatic aberration would be. So, as long as you're not overexposed by 3 stops, I think you should be all right. That's to say, if it's bright outside, you're shooting somebody under, let's say, a tree, it's super shady, you're trying to expose for the shadows, so you blow out the highlights behind them type of thing. Just take it into consideration. Now, I did shoot some text images, so like basically set up a book and shot the book just to see if there was any longitudinal chromatic aberration. And at very wide apertures, so at like an f1.4, f1.8, f2, you'll definitely notice that there are more green chromatic aberration than there was purple, especially if you're shooting at an angle, so just keep that into consideration. And my final thoughts on this lens. This is a great lens for general all-around photography. While it is a medium telephoto lens, you can use this for portraits, you can use this for astrophotography, you can do some street photography with this, and maybe some nature or landscape photography. So just take that into consideration. I think as far as 85 millimeters go, now I've only had my opportunity to shoot on two, this being one of them, the other one being the review for the Canon 85mm f2. I actually preferred this one, and it's not just because that it is an f1.4. I could do without the chromatic aberration at f1.4. But even just having this lens without autofocus or without image stabilization, as far as this lens goes, I think that this will get your foot in the door if you want to explore 85mm options. Although this is a completely manual lens, so just take that into consideration. That shouldn't deter you from picking one up. If you don't have the budget for a more expensive autofocus 85mm like a Sigma or a Canon, Nikon, Sony, whatever you choose, whatever system you shoot on, I think that this will get you into the ballpark. And if you don't absolutely need autofocus, save yourself a couple extra bucks. Buy the 85mm manual focus lens. I think you'll be pretty pleased. Even shooting manual with this lens, I mean, you can still get the images that you want if you know how to focus manually pretty quickly. I use a lot of older lenses. I use a lot of lenses that are only manual focus, so I'm pretty accustomed to using these. So the manual focus option didn't bother me as much as some people, because I know that some people want the autofocus option. So, and like I mentioned, I've only had the pleasure of using one other 85mm, which was the Canon RF85 f2. And I think that this lens right here gets you better images, softer bokeh, and out of focus backgrounds. So if you're in the market for an 85mm, don't pass this one up. I know it kind of sucks because it's only manual focus, but I really think that this will still get you the images that you really want. And if you're using a system like my Canon EOS RP, I can still, while using the EVF, zoom in and pull focus that way. It maybe takes an extra like 10 seconds to do it, but I still get tack sharp photos every time. The sharpness of this lens is absolutely great, even if you're shooting wide open at f1.4. Center sharpness is great, and especially if that's what you're looking for, you want those crazy out of focus backgrounds, I don't think that you can go wrong with this lens. So if you guys like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. If you didn't like this video, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons. I'm Jordan, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.